In the moment I included for September 1st in my book, Losing the Name, a Cancer Caregiving Memoir, my mom and I are reading a post that my sister had uploaded to Caring Bridge, which is a platform that we use to keep our support system updated throughout the course of my mom's treatment. And it was dedicated to me because by this point I was headed back to New York City after having been a primary caregiver for my mom for 5 months in Wichita, Kansas and Omaha, Nebraska. And my sister wanted to kind of honor and celebrate all I had contributed to our mom and our family during that period of time. This is a little bit of what she said. You, the prodigal son and brother, what would we have done without you these last 5 months? Probably gone crazier than we already have. I smile. We are so lucky you could drop everything to become a nurse, office manager, chef, and dog whisperer. As much as I wish I could have done the same, we all know that wasn't realistic. But where to start with all the support you've given to mom, you just can't. There's actually a lot to unpack, even in that part of the message, about who I was to my sister and our family prior to being a primary caregiver for my mom, and then how that kind of fed into who I was in that role and how things shifted as I was a primary caregiver for my mom. But first, I want to address one thing that my sister said. She uses the term prodigal son. At the time, I interpreted it as prodigy, and I think that is exactly what my sister meant based on the other context and how I know she and others in my family viewed me. But it actually means wasteful, extravagant, and lavish, which is not 100% inaccurate based on who I am, but it is not remotely relevant to the post otherwise. So I just want to point that out, that I think it is wrong, but it's also exactly what my sister wrote at the time, so I wasn't going to change it in the actual book. So who was I to our family prior to becoming a primary caregiver for my mom at 26 years old? Well, first and foremost, I was the youngest child by a large margin. My sister is 12 years older than me, and my brother was 10 years older than me. So I was very much the baby. I was also an accident. But all those stereotypes of the baby really ring true for me. I had a lot of attention on me. I was sweet and adorable. I didn't have a lot of the burdens and responsibilities that my siblings had, and I was spoiled. I was also just a really good kid. I never got in trouble. I was great at entertaining myself, but I was also able to be social with kids and adults. At school, I was an overachiever and a teacher's pet and a brown noser. I got straight A's. Every time I would come home, I would immediately do my homework. My parents would always joke about how the best time of the year for them were parent-teacher conferences because all they had to do was just go table to table and listen to how great of a kid that they had. So I was just an all-around little angel, so to speak. This persisted all the way throughout high school, even though I did have a rebellious period of time, but even that didn't really bubble up to the surface much. I only really got caught a couple times from my parents when I was throwing house parties, or I got caught by the cops at a house party. From an outsider perspective, they were just seeing that person who was in all the extracurricular activities. So I was in band, I was in National Honor Society, I was in musical theater, I was in yearbook. And on top of that, I was taking all the AP classes and I did really well on the ACT. And then I got into NYU. I was one of the 5 kids in my class who was actually going to a college out of state. I was even nominated for Homecoming King, though I did lose to Ross McEwen. And it's understandable because he was just significantly more popular than me. And I clearly definitely over it. I'm kidding. It really doesn't matter to me. I just had a lot going for me, and I was all about achievement at this stage in my life. And so to my sister and my brother, I was very much the golden child because their experience growing up was just so far different from mine. They were average to below average students. They would play sports and were very social, but were far from high achievers. My brother had some run-ins with the law. And after they both graduated from high school, neither of them immediately pursued college. So we were just completely opposite kids. For the most part, this didn't cause really any conflict between my siblings and I, at least not real conflict. There was, of course, a lot of jabs towards me about how perfect I was and how I could do no wrong in the eyes of our parents. And they also thought that I was pretty self-interested because I had been spoiled. That is true. Throughout the entirety of my life, a lot of things were given to me that they didn't have. So that totally checks out, but they're always just seeing the veneer of the outcome versus all the hard work that I was doing to actually achieve my goals and realize what I wanted to have happen in my life. And then I went off to study film and television at New York University, which is not a very practical major by any means. And they were always quick to remind me of that, even though they were very supportive of my creative pursuits. It was more like, oh, here Logan goes again. He has these delusional ambitions that he'll never actually be able to achieve. And they were right. This was the first experience in my life where I couldn't actually achieve what I wanted despite all my hard work, because with film and television, you need a lot of money and resources to be able to create something. So that's why I pivoted to writing books, because I thought, oh, well, I can do this all myself. But then that didn't pan out. However, I still had the delusions of grandeur that if I could just keep writing and paying my bills with menial jobs, that I would eventually get successful. So all this was swirling in the minds of my siblings as I stepped into the role of being a primary caregiver for our mom. I don't think they had any doubt that I would give it my all and that I would do a good job being a caregiver, but I imagine they were wondering if I could actually be selfless, because up until this point in my life, I was very selfish. And I also had no experience being a caregiver. Other than taking care of my pets, I didn't really have much experience in this area in life. You know, my sister had kids, my brother had stepkids, so they at least had that understanding of that responsibility. I had nothing really. And so I do think that there were some question marks there. Going back to that Caring Bridge post that my sister had made, the reason why it impacted me so much in that moment is that it was a reflection of how my reputation within the family had shifted in a really positive way due to me being a primary caregiver for our mom. I was no longer that perfect golden child with a lot of delusional aspirations who was really disconnected from reality. I was still that perfect golden child, but at least I had contributed significantly to our family and the well-being of our mom. And that reputation not only permeated within the immediate family, it extended outward into the extended family and into our friends. And I became a very different person in, I think, a lot of people's eyes. And not only that, I had evolved myself significantly due to the experience. I believe that caregiver defines me better than any of the other labels that have been applied to me throughout the course of my life. And I'm so grateful that I had the opportunity to fulfill that role for my mom and then write about my experiences and share them with the world in losing Linda May. I'll be releasing the next video on September 3rd, where I'll be talking about socializing after having gone through a life-changing event. So hit subscribe, leave any questions in the comments. The link to my book is in the description, and I will see you all then.